Welcome, 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 welcome. You probably have a lot of questions right now. Probably wondering why it's dark, why the candlelight's flickering so hard, and, adjusting between focusing on me and the darkness, along with why can't you see me, right? 'Cause I'm gorgeous. Wow, that was bad. Okay. I won't say that again, but I'll explain why I have it set up like this. I don't know. I wanted kind of like a warm campfire aesthetic because I remember. I don't know if most of you know this, but I started off as a podcaster, right, within the self improvement space, and podcasting just didn't lean into what I wanted to do completely. Although it was so nice and put me in this creative realm, and I know a lot of you that have creative personalities will know exactly what I'm talking about. But podcasting was just not not very expressive. I felt like I needed video as well. So I went to YouTube. But when I went to YouTube, I felt like I wasn't quite getting the aesthetic I wanted, and I wasn't really leaning into who I really was. I more so leaned into, what Hamza was doing because he was popular. So, of course, me being a small YouTuber thought, why don't copy this guy? Even he endorsed it, right? And I was like, well, I got a lot of hate for that, and I think some of it was actually possibly warranted. Now, even though it's not the haters, I'm not giving credit to the haters by saying that what they said was constructive or critical by any means, but I kind of took the criticism out of it and I saw what they were trying to say. And, you know, I was like, wait, yeah, I don't think this is me. So I started wanting to lean into who I was more. And I think we're right where we started, but just in video format now. Just like my podcast, I'm gonna do uh, video recordings like this now, and I'm gonna call them something along the lines of like late night candle talks. I would call them campfire, but this thing isn't much of a campfire, So yeah, that's all I got to show off the vibe. I can't really afford a campfire, but yeah. So today I wanted to talk about something short. I say that, but it always ends up being some long video, so bear with me. But as of lately, I've felt very, very lonely, and you know, I hesitate to say things like that because I'm not particularly good at sharing my feelings, and nor do I think, all this stuff on the internet makes me very hesitant to do so because, wouldn't make me much of a man, right? But here I am, being vulnerable because I know a lot of you probably feel the same way. And just because I'm some self improvement YouTuber doesn't necessarily mean that, I don't have my bad days. Because it sure as hell looks like that on the outside, doesn't it? It looks like we're all happy, joyous. I'm sitting in my backyard smiling all the time, and that's where I spawn. But no, no, no. That's not the case at all. I have my days. And you'd think that being a YouTuber with some subs and growing a channel would give you some sort of confidence. Having an aesthetic physique would do that as well, but sometimes, you can let the overthinking shadow all of your successes. So, along with loneliness, because you always have this feeling of constant inadequacy that you're not really good enough for someone because your experience has proved that to be the case. But I think a lot of that lies with a few things, and I'm starting to realize this now. It might take a while to actually learn and integrate within my mind, but something along the lines of this belief that I have about loneliness and how I'm this person. I've always almost made it a part of my identity to some degree. Because I have been this kind of person, and I realize that my words have power because now all I do is tend to find evidence of me, uh, evidence that reinforces that belief of me being lonely. And I let that be the determining factor when there's plenty of cases where I wasn't. And I feel like that's the case with a lot of us as well. We don't give ourselves enough credit for some of the interactions we have for some with some people. We don't, you know, we take some of the people we have in our lives for granted. And I'll be completely honest. I'm one to do that all the time. I'm not particularly great at being thankful for that kind of stuff. It just doesn't sit with me. Uh, yeah, definitely something I need to get better at. You can tell because I'm stuttering, right? So, and then one other thing is, something Tate said, something that a lot of people that I look up to, like Peterson and uh, Dr. Arlick of Healthy Gamer, he's talked about this as well, probably to some degree, but I formulated my own idea of it. It was there's no light without dark. And I felt like that was just some stupid quote. Didn't really, it made sense, but when you apply quotes like that and things you learn to actual experience, you realize what it actually means. So in my case, it was more so I experienced this loneliness and I almost don't let myself allow myself to experience that because I forget it's a part of the human experience to have those lows, to have those highs, because you can't have one without the other. Because if you had one without the other, you'd have no way of defining it as good or bad. Or at least I don't think so. Like, can you think about a coin that doesn't have the other side? No, right? It's hard to think about it. Nah, but um but yeah, you have to have that. And what tends to happen, I think, with me at least, and it might have happened with you as well, is you get into this state where you get or you experience a negative emotion, let's say for the sake of the argument, loneliness, because that's what we're using. And then you tell yourself you shouldn't feel that way because you're on self improvement, because you're getting better, because you have this undeniable stack of proof that you're actually like who you say you are. You shouldn't be getting this. So then you feel more like crap because you feel like, well, I've tried once more again to get out of this, but it persists. And I think it's because our expectations surrounding loneliness or any negative emotion for that matter is flawed. It's that we think that there's some escape out of it and that we can get away from it forever, but I don't think that's truly the case. And that might make you a little bit nihilistic within this very moment, but you have to think about some of the beauty in that as well. Is that I realized within the long term, instead of thinking the short term and how I felt so sad within those particular moments and how lonely I might have felt, I thought in the long term is that that's what manifested my creativity. That's what gave me the courage to be able to do the greater things. The bad days gave me, allowed me to do that. And that's what allowed me to really find myself, you know. Something else that helped me was realizing that you have God on your side. And I know that doesn't resonate with a lot of you because, you're forced to believe in your religion, or you might be. And I don't say that to be rude, but I know you feel that. You're socially pressured into it, a lot of you. And I was too. I can't blame you. It's never really explained. It's just follow, follow, follow. But you really do have to find religion for yourself. You have to find God for yourself. Because think about it. This is how I think about it. As a psych major specifically, this will resonate with you because this isn't like me just using, religious spiritual terms that you won't really resonate with. But it's more so this idea that you're essentially, and I get it. Let me start off with this, right? I get it. How can you believe in something you don't see with your own two eyes? I've had that question and I still have that question sometimes. But all I can tell you is when I pray to Him, when I pray to Allah, all of a sudden, I can't really explain it, but when I'm praying and I'm reading the surahs, even though I don't understand particularly what the surahs are, it's when I recite them in the melodic way, which is like kirat, right? It's almost like this. feeling that I'm able to voice out my concern to someone, and who better to do it than the creator of the universe. And it's almost like a therapist that can completely and utterly like hear me and understand me, you know. And you might say, well, that might be so far gone in your imagination, I can't do that. And I like, perhaps, I guess so, but it's really helped me because it helps me voice out my concern. I like thinking about it a lot like Freud's free association. You know, it was a form of therapy where the patients would basically say whatever they wanted, and it would help them. Uh, it'll help them get things off their mind, and that's essentially what you're doing. You're voicing it out to yourself, and I think that really, really helps because who better to help you self regulate than you and God? And you have got access to God pretty much all the time. You don't necessarily have access to people, that can help you all the time, because that's the one thing about loneliness. And I learned this from Dr. Arlick too, is that um, loneliness is like the one problem that an individual themselves can't fix. And I realized this living in America within a very individualistic culture. Most of the things you can actually fix if you take responsibility for them, but loneliness is something that's very difficult because it does require another person to some degree. But back when I was in Pakistan, and I think I've talked about this in some of my videos if y'all have seen it, is that my focus wasn't on me when I was in Pakistan. All of my urges, all of my, possible sins, I wasn't having any of them. I wasn't experiencing any of them because the focus was just, oh, my cousins, how are they doing? How am I going to enjoy my time with them? And, I was also in a very, very social setting. And that's another thing I realized about loneliness, is that we get so caught up in the I, the me. They say work on yourself, but a lot of working on yourself is also like not just you, because when you get so caught up in the you, like just yourself, it becomes very, very narcissistic. You can become very narcissistic. And I feel like, I know it's a personality disorder, but there's degrees to it. I don't see it as a binary of either you have it or you don't. It's how much, to what degree do you have it, right? And I felt myself becoming more of that. And then the focus was more on me, of how I look and how self-conscious I got when I was talking to people, and that made it just worse. That made the social anxiety worse along with that. And man, like, when I just take the time to genuinely talk to someone in a conversation and actively think like how I can move the conversation forward based on what they're saying and just let it flow, it just works a lot better because I'm not thinking about what I have to respond with just to make myself more likable to them. I'm just thinking about, hey, like, I'm letting this conversation flow and I'm just having a good time. And that's honestly what made things click and made me friends with several people that I didn't even expect to be friends with. And it also took a great deal of that loneliness away, but just because you get lonely sometimes and inevitably you're someone, I don't think there's a person out there that hasn't experienced loneliness. So that should be enough evidence to tell you that that's something you can't necessarily get away from. It has to some degree exist, and it's there for a reason, I think. Right? And I think sometimes it's there to tell you something. Because I know sometimes what happens is you're surrounded by people and you still feel alone, you still feel lonely, and that's like one of the worst ones. It's like, okay, at least I'm alone and I feel lonely. I understand that, but when you're around people and you feel alone, oh, fuck. Sorry for the vulgarity, but you know what I mean? That's the worst of them, because you feel so disconnected in that moment. Like you're just not there. So sometimes that loneliness is there to tell you, like, hey, maybe these aren't the group of people that I need to be chilling with and sitting down with, because maybe this isn't something genuine, not because of necessarily them, not because of necessarily you. Perhaps you're both at fault because you didn't see them necessarily as just a friend. You saw them as something you can take something from, right? Perhaps it was status, perhaps it was popularity, and I saw myself doing that this semester as well. I'm not even going to lie to you. Some people I associated myself with because I didn't even necessarily like to be around them, but I wanted to be around them because I knew I could get status and get to know other people. And then I came to that realization. I was like, wait, I'm no better. So I'm working on that. And yeah, just because you're lonely does not mean that you need to, smoke or drink, because I know that's why we do it, We're just trying to get away from it, and that's completely understandable. I get it, but, you know, that becomes a habit. And if that's what we're using to self-regulate ourselves, like don't you think that's going to affect you down the long term? Like, where do you think you're going to be if you keep that up? So we have to find ways to self-regulate, and the best one I've found so far is being able to talk to God, just put my head down to him. And there's almost like a humbleness in that. People think like, oh, God's narcissistic for, having us worship him and bow down to him. But I think it's more so this idea that if you worship God, you stray away from becoming narcissistic and focusing on yourself, and then leaning into this path down of loneliness and, thinking that you're so great and becoming arrogant, because it ends up hurting you at the end of the day. He doesn't need that. He can exist without you, right? And so that's what kind of humbled me and made me realize that, I'm a humble servant of God. And what helps with that is like knowing that I'm here for the servitude of people, like to service people as well. And again, that's that idea of it takes the focus off of you again. It's not about I, me, it's about us. It's about, helping them, focusing on them. So sometimes I think we think loneliness is just about like how we feel and how we want to get out of what we're feeling. But I think the way to actually get out of what we're feeling sometimes is actually caring about the other person and their needs and desires, and having that ability to empathize and have compassion. Now, as for how to do that, I wouldn't say I know I'm a psych major, but I'm not particularly a psychiatrist or a psychologist just yet. So I know where my limits are in terms of being able to say what I do know and what I don't know. And, I still struggle with it at the end of the day sometimes too, because at the end of the day, it's a shitty feeling and no one wants to feel it. But sometimes you do have to sit with it because it's trying to tell you something. So, yeah. Just something I had on my mind, and I was wondering if y'all felt the same. Just, yeah. Let me know. Let me know if you'd like to see more of this too. But to be quite honest, I think I might do more of it anyway, just 'cause I just like how it feels. I feel like I can just relax, sit back, just be who I am, and just talk, to be honest. So, yeah. That's all I got for you, okay? You rest up for me. Take it easy. Peace.